Maybe you've heard lately a little bit about something called the New World Screwworm, and you're wondering, okay, what is this thing? Do I need to be worried about it? How can I prevent it? Well, my name is Kelsey. I'm your best friend on the homestead from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this little awful creature and how you can hopefully keep yourself and your animals safe from it. I just got done watching an entire webinar from the USDA. It's called New World Screwworm webinar for the animal industry, and it's by the USDA. Came out a week or two ago. It's over an hour long, and so I thought that's kind of a bit meaty for a lot of people. So I want to just make a 5 to 10 minute video covering the highlights and most important parts of that. So if you're like dropping your kids off at school or something, or maybe on your way home from dropping them off, because there's some pretty gross stuff when you talk about this worm. I was originally going to say, oh, just put this on while you're making dinner or something. Don't do that unless you have kind of a strong stomach. I'm not going to show you the same pictures the USDA has, but I am going to explain what this thing does, which is pretty awful to warm-blooded animals. So we're going to cover all the important parts here in just kind of a nice little bite-sized video. So first of all, the New World Screwworm, it is like the larva, basically, of a fly. And the thing that's really nasty and awful about it is that it feeds off of living tissues. So a lot of times larva maggots, basically is what we're talking about here, they will feed off of dead tissue, but this feeds off of living tissue. Now, to go to a little personal story, I had a calf that ended up getting, from where she was disbudded, she ended up getting a maggot infestation. It wasn't screwworm, I'm pretty sure. It was just maggots, and it was I have a very strong stomach. I have kids and animals and to process things, whatever else, I can handle stuff, but having to, and this video, by the way, disclaimer, is going to have a lot of disgusting conversation about maggots to start. So just skip over that. Skip over that if that's tough for you. But having to clean those out and rinse out, it was the grossest thing I have ever had to do. And it's literally turning my stomach. It is so disgusting. So these things are especially nefarious because it's the living tissue they feed on. So what happens is the female lays her eggs, and she can lay between 200 and 300 eggs at a time. She will live between 10 and 13 days and can lay up to 3,000 eggs during one adult fly's lifetime. So what she does is she finds an open wound. It can be as small as a tick bite, which is so freaky, or she looks for anywhere there's kind of moisture. So eyes, noses, ears. And one of the stories they talked about how this happened inside of a cat's ears. It's so awful. So she lays her eggs in kind of the moist environment. And then when the larvae hatch, they burrow down into the living tissue. So that's part of what also makes this especially nefarious, is that it can be just a tiny little hole, but then underneath there, this big of an injury, but like this big of larvae that are wriggling around underneath the skin tissue and literally eating away into an animal. It's awful. The pictures they have of deer and things like that, like I was literally trying to make dinner or breakfast or something while I had this on, and it's awful. So that's why it's a really horrible thing, is that you can't always tell that the infestation has happened until it is too late. Now, if left untreated in animals, adult animals will usually die within 7 to 14 days. It is fatal. And in newborn animals, it's 100% fatality rate. So if this thing gets like an umbilical cords is another area where it's a huge risk. If it gets in a newborn animal, they are most likely going to die because their system just cannot handle that huge of an attack from something. So as I said, this will go for any warm-blooded animal. They didn't say anything about humans having had issues with it, thank God. But so deer was something had examples of. Again, the cat that had it get in its ears, they had to put it down because it literally burrowed into brain tissue. It's a really horrible thing, you guys. Other things, cows, horses, those sort of animals, they actually have, well, I'm jumping ahead. We'll cut ahead to that in a second. But so and chickens as well, poultry are warm-blooded. So any animals like that can be at risk. And it sucks because it's not just if they're injured, because again, a fly or a tick bite is teeny tiny and you wouldn't even know, but also just mucous membranes. Somewhere else, well, they have mucous membranes. There's nothing you can do to make your animals not have, moisture in their eyes. That's what they're supposed to have. So it's just a really horrible, horrible creature. So what happens kind of in the life cycle of the animal after the females hatch, they mate. They only mate one time with the male, which is an important thing to note. We'll talk about that in a second. Then they go find a moist tissue with living tissue to lay their eggs in. They burrow down, they're in there for a few days, and then eventually they pupate. So when they get big enough, they'll come back out of the living tissue, fall on the ground, go into the ground, and create like a pupa, like a cocoon sort of a thing in there. And then they'll hatch out as a fly, and the process will repeat itself. Now, the thing that's tough about this is, again, it can be hard to notice that it's happening. So some things you look for are smells, swelling, animals that are just acting listless, off feed, just kind of any funky behavior that as a farmer or a homesteader are kind of things you're watching your animals for anyway. Those are all just kind of general symptoms. It's just kind of odd behavior or the animal just acting like they're stressed. And from there, you would want to look for areas of maybe injury and kind of see, because even if you can see that there's a little injury somewhere, you won't see the larva because they're down and in. So that's something that you then, smell or press. The area will be kind of looser because the tissue is being eaten away under there, are things that you can look for. Now, this is not new to the United States. We have dealt with this before. There was an outbreak back, and they said 2016 in some of the Florida Keys. It got into an endangered deer population, and they were able to get that under control, but it was huge. They lost a lot of those animals. So it's a fly that likes warm, humid climates. So this is a much bigger issue down in Central America and South America. And it was actually really big in the 1960s. It was a problem, like a huge problem. And they had numbers and statistics on how much the beef industry took a big hit of this, especially in the south of the country. So there was a huge effort to eradicate it and push it down. And working together with Mexico, they got it pushed down through Mexico and past the Darien Gap, which is kind of like the thinnest part where the Americas are connecting there, and got it pushed all the way back there. But it has been making its jump forward, unfortunately. In recent years, the closest, let me check my numbers here. The closest it has been to the United States right now is they have it around 360 miles from the southern border. They have seen it. And unfortunately, it can travel fairly quickly. The flies themselves can't get far, but when they travel in the bodies of living animals, that's where the issues are coming from. One of the things they're doing is back in July, they prohibited the movement of horses, cattle, and bison from Mexico into the United States to try and prevent it from crossing the border that way, because again, it can be hard to tell if it is within an animal. So that's one thing they're doing. They also have entire facilities with hundreds of employees where they are actually raising male screwworm flies. So they are raising them. I don't know how they do this. They didn't get into the specifics, but they're raising males that are infertile, and then they are releasing them by air as kind of where they're dropped, as how they're dispersing these animals. Because as I said, insects, because as I said, the flies, they only breed one time. And so if they breed to an infertile male, then they are unable to continue to reproduce. So right now they are actually making 100 million and releasing 100 million of these males every single week. Which sounds like a lot, but they have a lot of ground to cover. So other things that are happening are making sure that animals are being quarantined properly before they are coming into the United States from warmer climates, making sure that your animal husbandry practices, or animal husbandry practices in general, should be tip top to keep this thing from spreading to other animals, and of course getting in the ground. Making sure our animal husbandry practices are tip top to prevent this thing from moving around and from them shedding into the ground as they're being transported as well. So it's a kind of a scary thing, but so far it's not to the United States yet, but it's close enough where it, I think, can be a risk. So some things to keep in mind. I'm up here in Minnesota, so we have our nice icy cold winters, which are good for some things, like keeping some of these things away. But it's still something to be aware of, and especially if you are in the southern part of the country, or if you're in Mexico or somewhere else, there are things that you can make sure you are doing to try and prevent this from happening. So first of all, of course, just having good basic animal husbandry practices and biosecurity is so important. So making sure you're knowing where your animals are coming from and making sure they are preferably vet inspected before they leave those properties to come onto your own. Making sure that when they do come onto your own, they go through a nice long quarantine period. Making sure that you are taking good care of your animals and checking over your animals thoroughly and regularly to look for any signs of illness, infection, that sort of a thing. Another big thing they talked about in the webinar is that not only do animals, of course, get sick from having their flesh eaten while they're alive, but it also causes secondary bacterial infections, is another huge reason why animals end up dying from this situation. Now, if you think that this is something that's happening on your farm or something you're seeing, you want to contact your vet immediately. You want to collect samples if you can. If you can collect samples of various stages, they said that is super helpful. If you do have access to the pupa somehow, or the larva at different stages, or the flies themselves. That's all very helpful. You also, if you're handling these things, want to wear gloves, just because of course we are a warm-blooded animal with mucous membranes. So making sure you're being cautious as well when you are handling animals that you think might have this issue. Make sure you are being very cautious and very careful and thorough, unlike I was several years ago when my cow got the situation in her horns. Make sure at dehorning, at calving, any medical sort of issues, well, not necessarily calving, any animals giving birth, the birthing process, both the mothers and the offspring, make sure you're being very thorough with cleaning, keeping flies under control on your property, which goodness, we've struggled this year trying to keep flies under control, but having some of those things in place, like good manure management, having chickens out there helping you makes a big difference. All these sort of things we can do to hopefully mitigate having bigger issues with something like this in the future. One other thing to talk about is the fact that there used to be some EPA, USDA, I don't even know what else kind of like approved sprays and treatments for this that they had back in, I think it was the 60s through the 80s, where they were saying this was a huge thing. I think it was 1980 something that they officially considered it eradicated from the United States and Mexico. And so they used to have sprays that were official sprays for it. Apparently they don't anymore, which is odd because I do have, from when my cow had that situation, the spray I have says that it is like a fly, and it does say screwworm. So I don't know for sure if that actually is considered qualified or not, but it says it on the can. So they say they don't have anything official for treating it at this moment in time, but I mean, I just have a can of that on hand. Couldn't hurt. Okay, so that covered, I think, sort of the Reader's Digest version of that, sort of the info you need to know. It's not something you need to be kind of terrified about, but it is something that you should be aware of, so that way you are practicing the things you're supposed to do to prevent this from happening, are just kind of general good animal husbandry practices to begin with. So if you're not doing those, work on integrating that into your management processes that you already have. So taking care of your animals, your fly control management, your quarantining, your vet checks, make sure you're doing all those things. That's going to go a long way to protect you and protect your animals, and of course, everybody else around us as well. Now, if you want to know anything else, again, I covered, I think, the meat and potatoes of it, but I will link that webinar down below if you want to watch it for yourself to see the visuals. They're horrible. Just be prepared. But if you want to understand that a little bit more, that's fine. Otherwise, I pretty much got you covered, I think. If you have any questions, though, please comment below, and I'll be happy to try and help direct you to the resources or find the answers myself. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you here next week for more from our rough and tumble farmhouse.